Ladies and gentlemen.
So we searched the world far and wide, and we finally found a Jew in Israel. And not just any Jew, but believe it or not, a funny Jew. They exist.
Who is it?
It's not you. He's coming in after you, but
Okay,
you'll
I'm
have a
excited.
great time. You'll meet him up. I'm honored to have on my first ever podcast in Israel the amazing Mikey Greenblatt, who is visiting us all the way from that other
New York
country.
City. Oh, the other country, New York City.
Yeah.
That's how we think of ourselves, by the way.
No, there's New York City, and then
And
there's
then
the rest of the world.
America. Yeah, the rest of the world. Yeah.
If you have not seen Mikey, it means that your grandmother has not sent her video or his video around.
Yeah.
Mikey had an incredibly interesting video that he put out. I'll let you speak a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah, the petition video. I didn't actually write it. They just filmed it. I'm like, there's no way this is going to go viral at all. And it had 17 million views on Instagram, which is that's more views than Jews. Like that's proper amount of views.
Has your life changed at all since then?
No, I still take Spirit Airlines to get around. I still work 3 jobs. I'm still going to have to pay yeshiva tuition. Nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed. Really, you have like, what is it, a $4,000 speaking fee?
Yes.
Okay.
By speaking fee means stand-up comedy set, and then I have to negotiate with the Chabads, and then I end up paying them to perform.
Right.
There's no winning, but yeah.
No, we'll get you a massage after the podcast. I think we have like a free shawarma. It comes with
it's a shawarma and massage.
It's a shawarma and massage
It's
podcast.
the tahina. They rub it on your back.
That's our incentive. Yeah.
And then instead of like grapes, it's just like pieces of veal.
People are actually more relaxed when they're getting a massage as they're eating shawarma. You'd be surprised.
Is that true?
That's
just big shawarma talking. That's
Bruh. Thank you, Big Shawarma, for invading this podcast. We're very appreciative of your time.
Thank you, Big Shawarma.
So tell me a bit about yourself, about your background, how you've come to be Mikey Greenblatt.
Yeah. As a Jew, you hear that question, and you're like, tell me about your background. I'm like, do I start with where I am religiously? Like, do I start with when I started getting oppressed? Like, do I start with my first kiss? You know? Background's always tricky, but
let's start with your first kiss.
Let's start my first kiss.
That's how we're gonna.
But she claims it didn't happen. Am I right, boy?
Okay,
no. That's where you guys clip it up.
No, this is all going in. We're live streaming right now.
Or first kiss without consent?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So my first kiss without consent was with my grandmother kissed me, and then my uncle. That was without consent. And then with consent.
Is that the Uncle Jerry you were telling me about?
That's what we call him.
Okay.
It's Uncle Juvie is what we used to call him. No, my background, I grew up in Englewood, New Jersey. I had a great modern Orthodox upbringing. I was just a sad kid. You know, sometimes you're just depressed. I feel like I got it out of the way.
Okay.
Like I got my depression out of the way when I was younger, which was very smart. A lot of people are depressed now. I'm like, let me be just so freaking depressed in 8th grade and just beat everyone to the punch.
I feel like there's a lot of convalescence with depression in comedy. Like, I feel like in order to properly convey the full gamut of emotions, you had to have gone through some shit. Like, the writers who are happy, they're not great writers. It's the same thing with massages and the tchina. Like, Helga is angry. She's come to this country.
There's happy endings, but there's angry people.
Right. If you go to the massage parlor and there's some Rebecca sitting there, she doesn't have the ancestral, like, anger or hate. Mm-hmm. She's just going to sit there and pet your back. It's not going to be a Helga which needs something to prove. I think we'll cut that part out.
I've never heard that comparison before.
From comedy and
I didn't know you knew that many words either. That was a very well structured sentence.
I words on some
the convalescence of comedy runs the full gamut of. Yes, there
was a thesaurus open in front of me right now.
Yeah, see, you're reading off a teleprompter right now. It's pretty impressive. The correlation between comedy and depression is real, and anyone that tells you otherwise is incorrect. As someone that's in the stand-up comedy scene. I've had 3 friends that have committed suicide in the past year.
It's been that bad?
Yeah. They weren't great comedians. But no,
that's what I thought.
No, they
listen to your set.
Yeah, they listen to my set and they kill themselves. I honestly, people that sometimes listen to, when you start doing comedy, like your entire, like the way you speak changes. Like you talk like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go kill myself. I would never say this like 3-4 years ago before I started doing stand up. But the way sometimes I have to catch myself speaking to a non-comedian, and I'm like, oh, I'm speaking as a comedian. This is really bad. Like, I can't just be like, oh, those black people.
Because you're desensitized.
I'm desensitized. It's how we talk. I speak with my black friends and my Mexican friends, and they're my black friends and my Mexican. And then I have to do a show in like NYU's campus, and I just stand there quietly for 10 minutes. But yeah, unfortunately, I heard this from Renan Hirschberg. I don't know if he actually opened for Louis in Tel Aviv a few months back. He's a phenomenal comedian. And I heard him say that the question that he was asked by Ami Kozak, who's a good friend of mine also on his podcast, he was asked, like, when you see a comedian, do you think they're brave, for going out there and doing comedy? And he said, I think a comedian, the reason why they go up there is because their biggest fear is not public speaking, it's being invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the correlation happens.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have something missing in you, or some kind of need or some kind of hole in you to go up on stage and try to make people laugh.
You need to remain relevant. You need to be loved because there's something that wasn't there to begin with.
100%.
So that'll be $9.99 for the hour of therapy. You can leave your bill at the way.
I should be charging all the people should be charging me.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
All my audience members.
How is it being a Jewish comedian, especially since October 7th?
Yeah, well, first off, every time I hear the word Jewish comedian, it sounds redundant. It sounds like you're just saying comedian. Because it's true. I mean, like, comedy was founded in the Borscht Belt. It was founded by, like, Jews were comedians.
For those of you who don't know, the Borscht Belt was a small conglomerate of Jewish summer camps.
Yes.
Not Auschwitz or Birkenau, like an actual Jewish camp that people would go to. And a lot of Holocaust survivors didn't have much family, kind of congregated together and made a family in the Catskills of the upstate of New York. And since then it's developed what you know today as stand-up comedy.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, a lot of people that have seen, like, Marvelous Miss Maisel, a lot of it takes place in the Borscht Belt.
Ronnie Dangerfield.
Yeah,
That's where Larry David got to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Seinfeld used to, it was a little past Seinfeld's time, but yeah. We kind of pioneered comedy. And so Jewish comedy has always existed. The last 10 years, I would say, there started to be comedians that were not just Jewish, but Jewish comedians. You know what I mean? Like Modi, he always talks about he's a Jewish comedian, not a comedian that happens to be Jewish. Even Seinfeld, he's one of my favorites, but he's a comedian that happens to be Jewish.
Right.
He doesn't do a lot of bits about Judaism.
What I've noticed about you, and I really do appreciate this, and you noticed this as well, I think we spoke about it the other day, instead of playing on the cultural tropes of Judaism and being a Jewish comedian as opposed to a comedian that's Jewish, you've really delved into, like, the nuances within Judaism. And if you don't have, let's say, a yeshivish background or be something correlated to a yeshivish background, you might miss some of the jokes there because you've decided to humanize the Jewish comedian. So why is it that you decided to go that route instead of the I'm a comedian that happens to be Jewish, and on the chance that it'll make it interesting, I will sprinkle in some yid.
Right. It's interesting. It's a very good question. What got me into stand-up specifically, I was doing acting and improvisation since I was from like 18 to, I don't know, 25 or something. So I've been doing stand-up professionally for like 2.5 years, I would say. But I've been doing comedy professionally for about 10 years. And when I was doing improv, but I would go to a lot of stand-up comedy shows because in kind of the same bubble. And I would see these comedians go up and they'd start off with something like, I grew up Jewish. And then the next 5 to 10 minutes is the most self-hating. It's almost like they looked up what are caricatures of Jews. Like I grew up Jewish and I got a lot of bagels and drank my Christian baby blood and money, my big nose. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? So I got frustrated into doing stand-up because I originally started stand-up just as a way to vent about other Jews, which is very sinat chinam-esque now that I look back at it.
Which is also very Jewish.
Which is also very Jewish, yes. And originally when I was doing comedy, my whole goal was to just wear a yarmulke but not talk about anything Jewish. Because it was so important for me to humanize Judaism. So to just wear a yarmulke and be like, I had a bad date, or I didn't get the job.
I did the same thing when I started comedy, except I whipped it out and had the bris there,
right,
so that people can see as they were coming through.
You're talking about your dingus?
The ding-along.
How's this work? We cut out clips of you.
All of this goes in, bro.
Oh, okay, cool. So as long as we could just like cut out the audio of you and then just my audio.
You got it.
Yeah.
Just basically you saying ding-a-ling.
It's like me saying something very deep, and then Jonathan's just like, I whipped my dick out. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, and the Jewish people need to work together. And you're like, yeah, I remember my time to comedy and put my peenie out.
Yeah, I think it's equally humorous and equally interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. That should be the name of your podcast.
Equally humorous and equally okay. Fair
enough. Yeah, you could always just do that. No, but I wanted to...
You were saying you wanted to show people that you were Jewish without necessarily doing Jewish material, and this way humanize you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But then I didn't start out in the Jewish scene at all. I was just the Jewish person in the scene. Like I started out comedy in New Jersey, but in like Elmwood, New Jersey, and like random bars in like non-Jewish Clifton, like just random.
For those of you who don't know, New Jersey is a state next to New York. It's okay.
Yeah, that's how it's known actually. It's called like on the licenses it says the state next to New York.
It's the one that's close.
New York's the Big Apple, and New Jersey's the state next to New York.
Completely. Most people just say they're from New York to begin with.
Never. I'm a Jersey proud boy.
I love that.
And yeah, so I was doing comedy in like places where they had like "Don't Tread on Me" flags, and like places where they've never seen a Jew.
I love that.
And when I first started doing stand up, I actually started as like a Jerry Seinfeld impersonator, and I just go on stage and I play the Seinfeld music on repeat, and I just be like, What's the deal with things? Yeah, and I'd just be like, I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, what's something that annoys you? And inevitably they would always yell Jews. So that was because they saw my kippah right away. Because I was way too scared to do comedy as my own person, which I looking back at that. But yeah, I would do no Jewish stuff. And then I lived in Texas for a while. I wouldn't do any Jewish stuff there. And then I started doing Jewish stuff, and I'm like, people have never heard of Jewish stuff. They've never heard a comedian talk about Shomer Negia, talking about Shabbat.
What was the flip? What was the?
The flip was it was a little after I did Kill Tony, which is like a very popular. It's the #1 live podcast that exists in Austin, Texas.
Aside from this podcast,
yeah,
this unnamed.
This is the #1 live podcast.
You want to come up with a name for this Israeli version of the podcast?
Yeah, just call it something B'Ivrit or something.
Okay.
Hasbara,
something B'Ivrit.
Whatever will get you the most views.
I'm going to call it some shtick. I love it.
Free Palestine.
Anyway, you were saying I have this odd way of just interrupting you with my own tangent.
No, that's fine. That's what a good podcaster does.
Got you, bro. The best podcaster ever. I know.
Did you take your Adderall before this?
I did not.
I think that's the issue. You should do a podcast where it's just constantly interrupting, and it's sponsored by Adderall or Ritalin.
I think I'll do one with and one without.
Well, the first half is without Adderall, and then you're like, we're going to take a 20-minute break, and then you come back and you're like...
You see the both of us like... Yeah, anyway, I want to talk about Judaism for a moment.
I've been up for 8 days.
It's okay. It's all right. I love it. Do you love it? I love
it. Yeah, it kind of switched. It definitely switched after the Kill Tony appearance. I came back to New York, and like once I moved to New York City proper, like when I was in New Jersey and Texas, I was the only Jewish comedian in Stomp. Like there wasn't even anyone who was somewhat affiliated with Judaism. There's no Jews, which is weird because there's usually tons. And yeah, I got to New York and I started seeing these Jewish comedians go up, and I'm like, what if I just went really hard? So the first Jewish joke I did for a non-Jewish audience was like, I'm like, guys, you want to hear a Jewish joke? And they're like, yeah, like expecting to hear. I'm like, no, like a really Jewish joke. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, why in the world would Mordechai name Esther and not Hadassah? Because Hadassah is obviously a murder. And I just went deep into it, and they were cracking up. And like, I've retired that joke since because it doesn't make any sense to them. But like, I do a show in Harlem every Monday night. I'm the only white person there, the only Jewish person, and I talk about Shomer Negia, and they love it because it's so interesting to them.
It's so foreign. If you look at like current Netflix shows that are out, My Unorthodox Life with a friend of mine, Shlomo Handler, Unorthodox, the show as well. I think people want to get a view into what it's like on the other side. And I think, genuinely speaking, this is doing a lot for peace. It's going to sound super cliche, but bear with me here for a moment. I think peace is the road to communication, and communication comes about when you know the other. The problem we're having now in Gaza is the fact that since 2005, they've never seen a Jew before. All they've known about us is that we're out there to shoot them and kill them and take their land, et cetera, which I'm not planning on doing, but I know you have something to do next week.
I'm doing a little, let's call it a real estate convention.
Okay, gotcha. Nonetheless, when you don't know somebody, that quickly turns into fear. And then that fear quickly turns into anger, and then the anger turns obviously into hatred. And then when you're 18 years old, you pick up a gun, and you get paid better than anyone else in your neighborhood if you go out and kill a Jew, and your family will get paid as well, especially if they don't have food on the table. It's probably a good thing to do it. I would probably do it if I was in this situation. Mm-hmm. So I think what you're doing with maintaining our identity by showing that we're fun and easy to be around, and not doing it in a sort of like self-deprecating way, even though comedy has a lot of that, is going wonders. And I don't mean to do this to increase your ego, because I know it's big enough to reflect mine as well. It's a compensation for something.
Absolutely.
And it's purely just an observation, and I'm honored to call you a friend, and I'm grateful that you're doing so.
Yeah, I'm honored to call you an acquaintance.
Nice.
I don't know about friend, but
it's okay.
No, I think that's a beautiful point. Like, I don't know. it's so hard to humanize yourself. Like you said, like these people haven't seen a Jew before. I have a friend from Indonesia, a comedian friend, and like I
An
was
acquaintance
honored.
or a friend?
What?
An acquaintance or a friend?
Yeah, an acquaintance. He's become a friend.
How did he make the transfer? I'm asking for a friend.
You're asking for a friend. He treated me well, and
I can't do that. It's too
he
much.
was a
Anyway,
great podcast host. No, he's from Indonesia. I was the first Jew that he met, and he said in Indonesia, like he's like, I've never met a Jew. He said this. This is a direct quote. He's like, "You've made me less anti-Semitic," which is it's a step in the right direction. Meaning he's still a little anti-Semitic, but it's a step in the right direction.
yeah, yeah.
But he's like in Indonesia, where he's from, they'll just be like, "Oh, it's raining again." The Jews,
Jews.
or like, "Oh, I didn't get a raise." The Jews. Like
That last one made sense though.
yeah, that one does, and the raining one also kind of makes
Oh,
sense. I felt like
basically.
it's like there's lasers, the Jews. No, but it's just like it's just in their vernacular
Yeah.
how they speak, and like you said in Gaza, it's just this is how they grow up, and yeah, obviously if they've never met a Jew before, and you just it's dehumanizing. It's exactly what Hitler did to the Jews. It's making us rats. We're not human beings. So the more we isolate ourselves, I also find that's dehumanizing us. The isolation. But when we're able to speak with people as Jews, as proud Jews, it humanizes us.
Completely.
You have so many stories of the Holocaust of people saving their neighbors and their friends who were their best, and you have a lot where they turn on them, but they have a lot where
it's a numbers game.
Because of that humanizing and because of working together, they treated them as humans.
Completely. I met a friend, forget names, in Morocco. I built a hotel about a year ago.
Nice flex.
Thank you. And he was a Holocaust denier. I met him on the flight from Marrakesh to Malaga. And he had no place to stay that night because his hotel had canceled, and he didn't know I was Jewish up until I told him when we landed.
Until you took a shower together.
I took a shower together. Actually, it's a crazy backstory. I'm not sure I should say it, but nonetheless. And towards the end of our trip together, we went to Barcelona, introduced him to some friends. He'd become very close because he was equally gregarious, and he would fuck with people on the street and just make a fool of himself in public. And we had a lot of that in common. We had some of the similar interests as well. And we'd been in touch ever since. And he went from being a Holocaust denier to someone who wanted to come visit Israel up until October 7th. October 7th comes around. I get a call from him saying Hitler didn't finish the job. I get subsequent calls, this again before we even entered Gaza, from people, the general contractor on the hotel, the interior designer, people that there was an earthquake in Marrakesh, not sure if you remember, about 6 months ago or so, and I'd gone back for some of the funerals because we had lost some employees there, and I'd sitting down and grieved with their parents. I bought gifts for their kids on their birthdays, and these are the same people who are calling for my extinction. So as much as I was very in the community, I spoke Arabic, I listened to the same music, I grew up in the same manner as a Moroccan Jew. I do feel as though after October 7th, there's been a pivotal shift, and I hope it's just my anecdotal experience. I hope on a whole it's not the case. Have you experienced any difference in your non-Jewish friends' interactions?
Yeah, I mean, there's no nuance anymore, and I think that's reflective both of social media and the greater society that we live in. Like you said, like maybe you would have more nuanced conversations before October 7th with some of these people from Morocco and whatnot. But yeah, nuance has died. So people are either on my side or they're against me, which is terrifying. That being said, there's still room to bring people, and it sounds bad to say on our side, but yeah, I mean, like some of my best shows have been going on after someone talks about Palestine. Like there was a gay comedian that went on before me a few nights back in New York, and he's talking about like he's bashing Israel and he's talking about free Palestine. And then I went up after him like, do you know what they would do to you? Like, and I just spent like five minutes educating a little bit, and we spoke after, and it opened dialogue. So I think October 7th, it's brought a lot of things to the surface, which is very unfortunate. But that means that there was a seed that was planted already,
Right.
And the con is obviously now we're experiencing more hate straight on and more verbal, like you said, like someone saying Hitler was right. That didn't come out of nowhere. That didn't come out of
It must have been underneath the surface.
there was a seed there or
Right.
something. So
Right.
the negative is, of course, what he's saying to you is disgusting. The positive is, weirdly enough, that opens dialogue. Like in negotiation books, it always says start the conversation by getting a no, because a no actually, believe it or not, a yes doesn't open up for negotiation. A no is the one that opens up. You're like, you said no, now we could get to talking.
I also think when people kind of hide their anti-Semitism, it makes it difficult to point it out in the arena of public discourse. Like I much prefer someone blatantly
Blatant
anti-Semitic
anti-Semitism is the
as
best.
opposed to somebody exactly.
It's
like,
so much
it's
easier
so
to
much
deal with.
easier to deal with as opposed to
100%.
somebody to be like, maybe I don't want to work with him.
Yes.
And I've had that experience in the past, and I can honestly say I will up my Judaism just so that I can kind of weed it out a little bit
Yeah.
and see how that works.
It's so interesting you say that about like upping your Judaism, because that I've seen post October 7th. People, which I think is great as long as it comes from a genuine place and not from like a follower count place. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sometimes
of like
people
upping your
serve a cause.
Judaism.
Sometimes the cause serves the people.
Right. Nasa Vinishma.
Yeah. All right. So you recently got married.
I got civilly married.
Okay.
I'm green carding the lady. So
Mazel tov. You're
Thank
importing.
you. I import.
How's
To all my
the-
5 towns girls out there, I love you gals. You're the best, but I would never.
Never.
I needed something different.
Completely. The Jewish dating scene is interesting.
Jewish dating, I don't know how it is in Israel, but it's no easy feat.
Especially if you're a modern Orthodox guy like yourself.
It's such a specific thing. I'm like modern Orthodox looking for someone that's artistic, but also still religious. And I have a theory, like, also once you get to your late 20s, you're either on the derech or you're off at that point. Like, it's just like, my friends are just burning out. Some of them are like, okay, maybe God doesn't exist, whatever. But some of them are like, I can't, there's no options. I'm off, I'm done.
You think that's why they get off of it? Is
Yep.
because of the whole, really?
I think
there is a direct correlation.
I think there's a direct correlation between sex and going off the derech.
I couldn't agree more.
If sex was allowed, we'd have so many from Jews. We'd have so... we do the justifications as like, all right, let me read some Christopher Hitchens and listen to a freaking Sam Harris podcast just so it makes it easier for me to go off the derech.
No.
But what they're really thinking is like,
I can have more
shit,
sex.
Oh.
Yeah, of course. It's interesting you say that. There's a hilarious joke I heard when I was younger. My rabbi actually told it to me. Basically, I'll try to be quick. It's smoking cessation event where like 3 rabbis, a conservative, an Orthodox, a Reform rabbi, espousing the ideals of quitting the smoke. And after the whole thing, the journalist comes up and sees these 3 rabbis behind the bima smoking a cigarette. And she's confused. They just spent the past 45 minutes preaching how they shouldn't smoke. Reform rabbi goes, listen, if we told everyone not to smoke, we'd lose too many people. So we look the other way. Very similar to the sex situation. The conservative rabbi goes, no, well, the Talmud says in Baba Kama, it's not really inhalation into the lungs, and therefore it's not considered smoking because I'm just keeping inhaling to the mouth. And the Orthodox rabbi goes, me smoking? I would never smoke. Me smoking? I sold my lungs to a goy. After I finish my cigarette, I'll sell it back to me. The idea is a very simple joke. The idea being that like we'll always find a loophole to get around it.
Sure.
But the whole sex in Judaism thing is totally helpful. Like the reason I think we're so successful is because we strive to push community, we help each other out, and education. And in these ultra-Orthodox like systems, in order to get the prettiest girl in the world, you have to be a Baal Chacham. You have to like be a Talmud Chacham. And the yeshivas will source for these Talmud Chachams. If, for example, a feeder school sends them a bad Talmud Chacham and they vouch for him, they stop pulling from that feeder school altogether. And so if you happen to be down on your luck, or if you're not from the wealthiest family, you just have to focus in your 13, 14, 15-year-old years on studying your ass off. Otherwise, you're not going to get a good wife.
Right.
And so like, we've kind of developed this 1,000-year-old tradition for natural or self-selection.
Yeah.
Into intelligence. I think it's fascinating to me.
Yeah. No, I mean, you talk about like comedians, entrepreneurs, actors, like a lot of them got into it, whether they'll admit it or not. It's because like that's how they get people to be attracted to them.
And here you are saying, I want to fill a hole inside me, and there's a void, and I want to humanize Judaism, but you were just doing it
I was just doing it for the ladies.
Find the wife.
Yeah. But it's nice to convince yourself that you have a higher purpose, even though it's really just...
In the same way your friends go through Sam Harris, you go through the higher purpose.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same difference, I guess.
Completely. So is it true that tragedy plus time equals whatever the hell you did last night?
What did I do last night?
Comedy?
Tragedy plus time. The cool thing about comedy is every bad experience has a silver lining of material. Like if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, I'd be like, what's funny about this? And then I'd be like, ow, you know? It's, but the hard thing is your mind doesn't turn off. Like comedians really get this, is like you are constantly writing. no matter what. And when you're talking, you're constantly there's like a hidden little guy in the back of your head on a little typewriter. He hasn't gotten a Mac for. I'm still on a typewriter. It's really annoying. It's very slow, but he's just typing this up and everything. And you're taking in your surroundings a lot more, and you're like always on alert. So yeah, some of my best jokes came from. I think one of the best jokes I do that you heard it last night when you came was when I talk about like Israel and then a Palestinian comedian taking a joke, and that actually happened where I'd done this joke, and that literally a Palestinian comedian came up to me, and he accused me of stealing his joke, which at the time I was nervous about. Now I'm like, that's a hilarious analogy. And the next night we had a show, and there was maybe like 60 people there, and he was on the lineup with me, and he went up before me, and apparently he had told everyone at the show before I got there about this Jew that was like took all his jokes. And by the way, and this is also leading to the joke, but I do have recorded evidence that I showed him after that I did this joke before him, which is also a hilarious analogy between Israel and Palestine. And he went up and he's like, these Jews, like, first they're taking our land, now they're taking our jokes, and like the audience was rolling. And then I had to go up, and I was just like, I was so hurt that I went up for like 3-4 minutes, said a little bit, and walked off. And I cried. I cried the whole. It was in like Suffern, New York, which is whatever, like 40 minutes from my house, and I cried 40 minutes home. And for weeks, I was like just in pain.
You think you need to be more in touch with your emotion in order to turn on that typewriter behind your head, or is it something that just constantly goes from when you were born?
You need to. I think comedy specifically. I think there's a comedy gene. You're either born funny or you're not. I don't think it's a teachable skill, but I think it could be nurtured. So that gene of writing and being aware, the more you do comedy, the stronger that kind of gets. But I do think you're either funny or you're not. Mm-hmm. Then it's a matter of how you nurture it and bring it into that space. But it's always happening.
I notice with your comedy more so than others, you have this tendency to switch in and out of formats. So like you'll go pure improv and you'll spend and riff very Matt Rife, and then you'll go back to where your joke was, and things happen, and you're very quick, more so than the average comedian that you'd see in some of the higher caliber comedy clubs. Wow. Is that something
Thank you,
that
first of all.
Anytime, Baba? Is that something that like you've practiced, or something that comes with birth?
No, that was, again, I started doing like improvisation professionally, which professional improv, you're not making any money, but whatever. It's called like house teams in New York City. You do like levels and levels of improv. So, I put in my 10,000 hours of improv. I was doing improv every single night for 10 years. So that quickness was nurtured. I mean, and that's kind of the comedy now that I've been gearing towards, because I love the idea of like it makes me feel like a confident Jew, and I feel like we're missing that a lot. We are missing people wearing because I wore my yarmulke in such crazy spaces where I felt, when I first started doing comedy, I felt the yarmulke on me. You know what I mean? Like, you ever wear your yarmulke and you're walking around, you're like, I'm wearing a yarmulke. But because I just kind of brute forced my way in, after 80 or 90 sets, eventually I'm like, fuck it, I'm wearing a yarmulke. Like, let me fucking do it. Let me say the word fuck with a yarmulke. And most rabbis would not be happy with that, but I do think there's a greater good. Like, I'd rather those black people in Harlem, the Mexicans when I perform in whatever, to see me with a kippah and maybe saying some trickier things than to just see their landlords with kippah kicking them out, which when I do comedy in Harlem, those were some of the first questions I got. Like, what do you think about those landlords? Which it's so anti-Semitic, but that's just how they think. And like you said, the people that are in Gaza, that's just how they think. So it's we could either keep this victim mentality and stay away from them and continue to post on our echo chambers, or we could go on the ground and it's going to suck for a while, and some of us are going to hate us. Some of them are going to hate us even more for meeting us. But some of them are going to be like, hey, that Jew is pretty cool. And those are the people that we could still hit. Like, they're still there,
Completely. I think we've done a great job explaining to the world why it is we need some form of safe haven. And Holocaust education has been fairly up to par with Yad Vashem, disseminating the belief in tolerance of the other through the Common Core curriculum in the United States. But what we haven't done is translate that into, these are the same people that were there in your history textbooks. It's become something of the past. And nowadays, our generation is completely, at least in my mind, disregarded it. And if they believe it exists to begin with, obviously. So, what do you think we need to do in terms of an average person who doesn't have your platform, who would like to humanize Judaism, who would like to make it out of the echo chamber?
And they're not going to like this answer, but it's throwing a yarmulke, throwing a Magen David at least.
Even
But I
if you're
hate when people,
cursing, even if you're doing all the Mara
the Rebbe has a great story of Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Chabad Rebbe, where there's this person who came to him and he's like, "Listen, Rabbi, like I want to become more religious, but honestly, like I go to the clubs, I do this, I do that, and I don't want to wear a yarmulke, and people are going to judge me and be like, oh, Jews are in here in bad places." And Rav Menachem Mendel Schneerson just says, "Don't worry about it, just stop shaving." And the guy's like, "What do you mean stop shaving?" And his rabbi's like, "You can continue doing whatever you want, just stop shaving." He comes back a couple months later. It's like this from guy. Like, and he's like, everyone started just confusing me for a rabbi, and then I just started, I couldn't keep going to these clubs because of this beard. It made me look too much like a rabbi, so I just started getting back into Judaism, and now I don't go to the clubs. And it's kind of like Nasa v'nishma, right? I keep saying Nasa, do and then listen. That's like a core component of Judaism is Nasa v'nishma. We do first and then listen second. I think it's almost like Aliyah, right? It's the same as Aliyah, where people are like, yeah, I'll make Aliyah when, I'll do this when this happens. Just make Aliyah and then deal with the repercussions. I'm never going to make Aliyah, but just...
That's cool. I think we've had enough Jews here to begin with.
Yeah, it's a little much at this point.
There's a concept of mitzvah gorer mitzvah, avera gorer avera.
Say that one more time?
Mitzvah gorer mitzvah, avera gorer avera.
Like a mitzvah makes another mitzvah?
A mitzvah makes another mitzvah, a bad deed makes another bad deed, regardless of intention.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's something there with Nasa v'nishma, where the idea is go out into the uncomfortable area, go out of your comfort zone, even if you have no intention or idea of what exactly you're doing. And eventually it'll lead to another good deed in that nature. And the opposite works as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you're wearing a kippah, it will force you to do...
Yeah, I still have an issue with it. Like for me, I'll carry a kippah in my pocket, and I'll put it on before I do any sort of bracha. But I just do too much ludicrous shit.
You do.
I'm naked very often. It's a lot.
I know. I get it. I get what you're saying. Yeah. I think it's a very specific person. At the end of the day, though, I'd throw it on because I know you think about all the bad things. First of all, most people don't care. The ones that are already like, oh, look at that Jew doing that, they're already thinking that. Yeah. They are. Yeah. But I'm telling you, the ones that you hit that are like, I didn't know you're Jew, or they see that you're Jewish and you're fun. Like, you're a fun dude to be around.
Yeah, you're gonna make me blush.
So like, if you're hanging with these goys and you're, I don't know, even if you're eating bacon, God forbid, and they don't know any of these things, they're gonna be like, oh, that Jew's not being shomer negvia. They don't know what that means. They have no clue.
I think it also, like, with my professional life, I've been working in venture capital. I know I said I want to talk about myself.
No, please tell me a little more about it. I want to know how you got this apartment.
No, it's cool. So I have a certain reputation, right? I can't be doing stupid shit because then people will feel less comfortable investing with me or in one of the subsidiary companies.
Is your Instagram private or what?
It's public, but no one that I work with has it. Okay. So I'm in this sort of like crossroads where like I'd love to be who I am in public, but it comes at a cost.
Absolutely.
So
you need that. No, you need
people like deep down just want to be informal and don't know how to let it out. Like what's
as a comedian, yeah. I have a corporate job, and when I speak corporate lingo, like it's just hilarious to me. I'll mess with them all the. I'm the only Jew in my company somehow. I work in New York, and like constantly, my boss is like, "How's your weekend? How's your weekend?" I'm like, "Baruch Hashem." Like I had a great Shabbat, and he can't question it because there's such like a corporate, like PC culture. I just love messing with the format.
I feel like constraint brings like some form of
creativity. Constraints brings the most hilarious things. Like when I'm in like yeshivish areas and like I feel how uptight, I can't help but crack up. It's just so funny to me. And again, like because you're such a unique person, I'm telling you, the people that you affect are going to remember you as a Jew more than the people that you had a negative encounter with.
Or maybe I was always wearing the kippah.
It's like Scooby-Doo where they take off the mask. It's Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson.
So what's next on your plate? Where's life going to take you next?
My life is always trying to get me to keeping your identity without sacrificing your values. I don't know what that looks like, but like I want to be called up for an Oscar, and then they're like, "Where is he?" And then someone's like, "He's at Mincha." That's where my life's at.
I got you. I got you.
It's life's good, man. I mean, I think, and I are very similar in the sense that we've worked really hard to be where we are, like really hard, and sacrificed a lot. I wouldn't call it sacrifice because I look at discipline separately than sacrifice. Like I look at all the times I said no to things to focus on my career, not as sacrifice. It's just discipline, quite frankly. But it's just continuing that trajectory.
Oh, I didn't work hard at all. Just
Oh,
all
that's
daddy's
so
money.
annoying.
Yeah,
I hate that.
no, it's cool.
I hate that about you.
Yeah,
I
it's
really do. I was just trying to build you up because I want some of your money.
No, it's cool.
So
It's cool. We're gonna cut you a check afterwards.
I'd appreciate
Erica,
that.
we're gonna cut him a check. Okay.
Okay, good. Yeah, get that podcast money. No, I work with Jay Sketch. I don't know if you've seen some of our videos,
yeah.
but Ellie Leibowitz has been like a mentor of mine. Jewish comedy, I know people are like, Jewish comedy has always existed, but like Shoals did not have comedians. Like Ellie has this great joke. I don't know if you'd want me to say it, but no one's watching your podcast anyways.
No, this is going nowhere.
So,
this is for me to masturbate.
Yeah. But Ellie has this great joke where like he performs at a show and he's like, shows don't usually have comedians. Like it's always like the same story. Like we had this one comedian in 1986 and he spoke about holding hands and it was like the worst Tisha B'Av we've ever had. It's always like Orthodox Judaism in comedy is not a thing. As much as Jews like to think, oh, it's so funny, it's not. Mordechai Shapiro, Eitan Katz,
it's all fairly new.
They could sell out.
Yeah, fairly new.
So I'm working now with Ellie Leibowitz, Ami Kozak, who's just brilliant, making all these videos. Cause it's the first time in my life, and I think
there's a lot of talent in the ultra-Orthodox community and in
the
modern Orthodox
there
community.
absolutely is. But they just have to start saying Lashon Hara.
Exactly. I think it's just the opportunity cost. Like they have this promising career in finance, or they can be who they are and like take a chance on themselves. And they have Jewish parents.
That's kind of everywhere. Yeah. That's the crux of any artistic passion, though. I don't think that's unique to us. It's unique to us to try to pursue it in the Jewish field.
You still manage to like take the most important parts. Like you have this beautiful like career in comedy, but also do such important work selling software to personal injury lawyers. And I think that's like the world needs software.
Right. Sometimes I feel like I'm wasting my time doing comedy.
You should forget the comedy.
I know.
And focus just on selling the software.
Once the software starts paying the bills, right now comedy is kind of keeping me afloat.
Because what will the lawyers do without the software?
I'm an ambulance chaser's ambulance chaser. You know what I mean?
I did.
It's not an easy world out there.
All right. Do you have anything that you want to tell the people, all three people that are watching right now?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for being part of the John Karten.
I don't think we even have a name for this. If you have a good suggestion for a name,
we're gonna do a contest.
I should probably explain.
And John will host you in his apartment for 3 weeks.
Right. That's actually happened one time. I don't know exactly how we're going to have this, and so we might cut this whole part out, this last portion. But essentially, I have fairly interesting people from different parts of my life.
Did you just say fairly interesting?
Yeah, with an exception of this beautiful man.
Somewhat fairly mundane people who are keep me somewhat.
They make you smile. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually start bringing them in and having them take opposing opinions. This was kind of like a feeler, the first one. But we're going to have them like touch on taboo subjects and their areas of expertise as well within the frame of Judaism and, of course, circumcision.
Mm-hmm. Circumstances.
No, I meant what I said.
Okay. Please go on. Oh, is that it?
That was it.
Anyways, you can follow at... Make sure to follow at Jewishvibes, at JSketch Comedy. Most importantly, make sure to put on Tefillin tomorrow.
What's the OnlyFans? Plug the OnlyFans.
Jonathan Karten, venturecapitalism.edu. And thanks for watching and can't wait to see you again.